It was a gray morning, the kind that carried both silence and sorrow in its cold air. The young millionaire, Daniel, stepped out of his sleek black car holding a bouquet of white lilies, the flowers his late wife, Elena, had always loved. Every year since her passing, he came to visit her grave, but this year, something felt different. As he walked through the quiet cemetery, his heart heavy with memories, he noticed a small figure crouched near Elena's headstone. At first he thought it was a child playing, but as he got closer he saw a little girl, barefoot, shivering and holding a rag in her tiny hands. She was cleaning the grave, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Daniel froze, unsure what to say. The girl looked no older than 8, her hair messy, her clothes torn. She glanced up and whispered timidly, "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to touch it. I was just making it clean." Her voice trembled as if she feared punishment. Daniel knelt beside her, placing the flowers gently down. "It's okay," he said softly. "But why are you here, little one?" The girl wiped her tears and looked away. "I come here every morning," she murmured. "This lady, she looks kind. I lost my mommy too. I thought maybe if I keep her place clean, someone might take care of my mommy's grave too." Her words hit Daniel like a thunderbolt. The child wasn't begging for money. She was giving love, the one thing he thought had vanished from his world since Elena died. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lila," she replied, clutching the rag like a treasure. Daniel noticed her hands, scraped dirty but gentle as she wiped dust from the stone. Something inside him stirred, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Watching this fragile child care for someone she never knew made his heart ache. As he stood up, a gust of wind scattered some dried leaves across the grave. Lila quickly chased after them, trying to keep the spot neat. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You're doing a wonderful job, Lila," he said. "But where do you live? Does your family know you're here?" Her silence said everything. She lowered her head. "I don't have a home anymore. After my mommy got sick, nobody wanted me around." Daniel felt an invisible knife twist in his chest. He remembered how Elena had always talked about helping children who had no one. "Promise me," she once said, "that even if I'm gone, you'll never stop sharing kindness." For years he'd buried himself in work, numbing the pain with success. But now, standing beside a little girl wiping his wife's name with her sleeve, that promise echoed louder than ever. "Come," he said, extending his hand. "Let's go get you something to eat." But Lila shook her head. "I'm not allowed to go with strangers." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then let's not be strangers. I'm Daniel. And this," he pointed to the grave, "is my wife. Elena, you've already met her." That made Lila smile, a small, timid curve that broke through the sadness in her eyes. They stood together for a while, saying nothing, just two souls broken in different ways, connected by kindness. Before leaving, Daniel watched her carefully place a tiny wildflower on the grave. "For your wife," she said. "She must be an angel now." As Daniel walked back to his car, he looked at her one last time, still sitting there, still cleaning, as if protecting a memory she never owned. He didn't know it yet, but this little girl would soon lead him down a path that would rewrite his entire life and fulfill his wife's last wish in the most unexpected way. That evening, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Lila. Her fragile face, the way she cleaned Elena's grave with so much care, haunted his mind. He sat in his massive mansion, staring at the untouched dinner laid before him. The table was long, beautifully set, but empty, just like his heart had been since Elena's death. For years, silence had been his only dinner companion. Tonight, however, that silence was filled with the sound of a little girl's voice echoing in his head. "I thought maybe if I keep her place clean, someone might take care of my mommy's grave too." He pushed his chair back suddenly and grabbed his car keys. It was already getting dark, but something inside him wouldn't let him rest. He drove straight back to the cemetery. The wind howled through the trees, and the night fog rolled in, giving the place an eerie calm. And there, right where he'd left her, was Lila, sitting by the same grave, arms wrapped around her knees, shivering. Daniel's heart broke. "Lila," he called softly. She lifted her head, startled. "You came back," she whispered. Daniel crouched beside her and took off his coat, wrapping it around her tiny shoulders. "It's cold out here. You shouldn't be alone." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she said nothing. "Come on." Daniel said gently. You must be hungry. She hesitated, her lips trembling. I don't want to bother you, sir. Daniel smiled. You're not bothering me, sweetheart. You're helping me keep a promise. They drove to a small cafe on the outskirts of town, the kind of place Elena used to love. The owner, an old man named George, recognized Daniel immediately. Haven't seen you in months, son, he said kindly. Then he noticed Lila, thin as a reed, eyes wide at the sight of warm food. George didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and said, Soup's on the house. As the steaming bowls arrived, Daniel watched the girl devour the food as if she hadn't eaten in days. Slow down, he chuckled. There's plenty. Lila smiled shyly. It's been so long since I had soup. My mommy used to make it when I was sick. Her voice cracked on the word mommy, and Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in years, he felt something awaken inside him, a sense of purpose. Lila, he asked softly, where have you been staying? She shrugged. Behind the bakery. There's a little shed. I sleep there sometimes. Daniel clenched his fists under the table, a child living in the cold streets while he slept in a mansion of marble and glass. It felt like a cruel joke. When they finished, Lila stood up and said, Thank you, Mr. Daniel, I should go now. But Daniel stopped her. No, he said firmly yet kindly. You're not going back to that shed. You'll stay somewhere safe tonight. Lila's eyes widened with fear. Please don't take me to the police, she pleaded. They'll send me to the home again. They hurt me there. Her words made Daniel's blood run cold. He knelt down so she could see the honesty in his eyes. No one will hurt you, Lila, I promise. He drove her to his guest house on his estate, small but cozy with a warm bed and clean blankets. Lila looked around in awe. Is this really for me? She whispered. Daniel smiled. Yes, you deserve warmth, not cold concrete. Before leaving, he brought her a stuffed bunny that had belonged to Elena's niece years ago. Here, he said, handing it to her. To keep you company. She hugged the toy tightly and looked up at him. You're very kind, Mr. Daniel. Your wife must be proud of you. That single sentence shattered what was left of his composure. He forced a smile, whispered goodnight, and stepped outside, wiping tears he hadn't shed in years. As he stood under the moonlight, looking back at the glowing window where Lila peeked through the curtains, he whispered to the sky, Elena, maybe this is your way of reminding me what love truly means. He didn't know that the next morning, a truth hidden behind that little girl's sorrow would shake his soul and connect his wife's past with Lila's in a way he could never imagine. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of the guest house, casting a soft golden light over the small room. Daniel stood at the doorway quietly watching as Lila slept peacefully for the first time in what looked like years. Her tiny hands still clutched the stuffed bunny, and for a fleeting moment, Daniel felt something that resembled fatherly warmth, a feeling he never thought he would experience again. When Lila finally stirred awake, she looked startled to find herself in a bed. Good morning, Daniel greeted softly, handing her a tray with warm milk and bread. I made breakfast. Hope it's okay. Her eyes widened. You made it? She asked, as though a millionaire cooking breakfast was the strangest thing in the world. Daniel smiled faintly. It's been a while, but I think I still remember how to toast bread. She giggled quietly, a sound so innocent, so pure, that Daniel couldn't help but laugh too. For the first time in years, there was laughter in his house again. After breakfast, Daniel called one of his trusted employees, Mrs. Green, a kind elderly woman who had worked for him since Elena's time. Mrs. Green, he said, please take care of Lila today. Get her some clothes, maybe some books. Mrs. Green's eyes softened. She's a sweet child, sir. Reminds me of Mrs. Elena, always caring for others. That name, Elena, echoed in the air, and Daniel's smile faded. He walked outside to clear his thoughts. As he strolled past the garden, something caught his eye. A folded paper sticking out from the flower pot near the entrance. Curious, he picked it up. It was worn and faded, written in a child's handwriting. The note read, Dear Lady Elena, thank you for the food you gave us that day. Mommy said angels come in many forms, and you were ours. I promise I'll never forget your kindness. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. Lady Elena? Daniel's heart pounded. He rushed back to Lila. "Where did you get this letter?" he asked gently but urgently. She looked confused. "I wrote that a long time ago," she whispered. "A nice lady gave us food when my mommy was sick. She said her name was Elena. She had the prettiest smile." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His wife. Elena had met this girl before she died. It wasn't coincidence. Fate had brought them together again. He sat down beside Lila, emotions flooding through him. "Lila, that lady? She was my wife." The little girl blinked, her mouth open in shock. "Your wife?" she whispered. "But she helped me and Mommy when nobody else would. She gave us food and even wrapped my Mommy's hands in her scarf because it was cold." Daniel felt tears spill down his cheeks. He remembered that scarf. The one Elena never got back. The one she said she gave to someone who needed it more. Now he understood. Lila's mother was that someone. Daniel knelt before Lila. "Do you remember where you used to live?" She nodded slowly. "It's gone now. The landlord said we had no money, so we had to leave. Mommy got sick soon after." Daniel's heart broke as he imagined Elena kneeling beside a poor woman and her daughter, giving them comfort without ever telling him. That was just like her, always helping, always loving. He walked to Elena's grave later that day with Lila by his side. As the wind rustled the trees, he whispered, "You kept your promise, my love. Even from heaven, you found a way to remind me of what matters." Lila placed a small flower on the headstone and smiled up at him. "She was a good lady," she said softly. "I think she sent you to find me." Daniel's voice trembled as he replied, "Maybe she sent you to save me." That night he couldn't sleep. He stared at an old photograph of Elena, her warm smile frozen in time. He finally understood what she had meant when she told him, "If you ever feel lost, follow kindness. It will lead you back to me." And now, through Lila, it had. But destiny had one more twist to reveal. Something about Lila's past that even she didn't know. A secret buried deep within her mother's final days. A secret that would make Daniel question everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and fate itself. For the next few days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about what Lila had said, about Elena meeting her and her mother long ago. The thought that his wife had once helped this same little girl before her death felt almost divine, like destiny was gently stitching their lives together. But something still didn't fit. Why did Elena never mention it? And why did Lila's mother seem to disappear afterward? Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel began searching for answers. He called an old friend, Dr. Harris, who had been the head physician at the hospital where Elena once volunteered. "Harris," Daniel said, "do you remember a woman, poor, sick, with a little girl named Lila? Elena might have helped her." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Dr. Harris spoke in a somber voice. "Daniel, yes, I remember. That woman's name was Maria Lane. She came here once, very ill. Your wife paid for her treatment, but Maria refused to stay long. She said she didn't want to be a burden." Daniel felt a chill creep up his spine. "Did Elena know she died?" he asked. "She suspected," the doctor replied gently. "She tried to find the little girl, but by the time she returned, she was already very sick herself." Daniel's knees went weak. Elena had spent her last healthy days searching for Lila, and now, by some miracle, that same little girl was under his roof. He closed his eyes, whispering, "Elena, you never stopped loving." That evening, Daniel sat with Lila near the fireplace. She was wearing a soft sweater Mrs. Green had bought her, her hair neatly brushed, her cheeks glowing from warmth and safety. "Lila," Daniel began, "did your mommy ever tell you anything about the lady who helped you?" Lila nodded slowly. "She said that lady was the kindest person she ever met. She said if I ever feel alone, I should find someone with a heart like hers." Her eyes sparkled with innocence. "I think that's you, Mr. Daniel." His heart clenched. "No," he said softly. "That's her inside me." Suddenly Lila's expression changed. "Mr. Daniel, I think I have something." She ran to the little bag she had kept with her all this time and pulled out an old envelope, its edges yellow and brittle. "Mommy told me to give this to the kind man my lady friend used to talk about, if I ever met him." Daniel froze. "To me?" She nodded. "She said his name was Daniel." His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter. Inside, written in Elena's delicate handwriting, were the words that made his breath catch. "My dearest Daniel, If this letter ever finds you, it means fate has done what I could not. The little girl you see is a blessing, not a burden. Her mother, Maria, was my friend. She reminded me of the kindness you once showed me when we had nothing. I helped her as best I could, but she had little time left. I promised her I'd make sure her daughter never felt alone. If I'm gone when you read this, please, keep that promise for me. Love her as if she were our own. Because in helping her, you'll find me again. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he clutched the letter to his chest. Elena had already known what she wanted him to do long before she passed. The universe had been waiting for this moment. The reunion of a promise made in love and fulfilled in faith. He looked up at Lila, who stood silently, confusion clouding her innocent eyes. "Mr. Daniel," she whispered. He knelt before her, voice trembling. "Lila, my wife wanted me to take care of you. You're not just a stranger in my life. You're part of her last wish." Lila's lips quivered. "She remembered me?" "She never forgot," Daniel whispered. "And I never will either." The little girl threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. Daniel held her close, feeling something sacred awaken inside him, the emptiness of loss finally filled by the warmth of love reborn. As the fire crackled beside them, Daniel whispered to the portrait of Elena hanging above the mantel, "You did it, my love. Even from heaven, you're still teaching me how to be kind." But fate wasn't done yet. The next morning, an unexpected visitor would arrive at Daniel's door, holding a truth that would change both his and Lila's future forever. The next morning dawned bright and peaceful, a rare kind of morning that carried hope instead of heartache. Daniel was preparing breakfast when the sound of the doorbell echoed through the mansion. Mrs. Green hurried to open it, and standing there was a middle-aged man dressed modestly, holding a small folder in his hand. "Good morning," he said politely. "I'm looking for Mr. Daniel Wright." Daniel stepped forward. "That's me. How can I help you?" The man gave a warm smile. "My name's Father Raymond from St. Mary's Church. I used to run the shelter your wife supported. I came across some papers while organizing old records, and I think they belong to you." He handed Daniel the folder. Inside were a few photos and a document, an adoption application, signed by Elena Wright. Daniel's hands shook as he read the date. It was just 2 weeks before Elena's accident. The application listed one name under child to adopt, Lila Lane. The world seemed to stop spinning. Elena had planned to adopt Lila even before she passed away. His wife had wanted to make this child a part of their family, not out of pity but out of love. Daniel felt his eyes sting as he whispered, "She was already part of our lives. I just didn't know." Father Raymond nodded. "Your wife had a pure heart. She said, if I can't save the whole world, at least let me save one heart that's still beating." She loved that little girl deeply. Just then, Lila appeared at the top of the staircase, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mr. Daniel?" she murmured. "Who's that?" Daniel turned toward her, a tear slipping down his cheek, but this time it wasn't from pain, it was from gratitude. "Someone who's here to tell us how much my wife loved you." Lila tilted her head. "Your wife loved me?" Daniel nodded, smiling through tears. "Yes, Lila, she wanted to make you our daughter." For a moment, the little girl stood frozen, as if her heart couldn't believe what her ears had heard. Then she ran down the stairs and hugged him tightly. "Really? She wanted me to be her little girl?" she asked, voice trembling. Daniel wrapped his arms around her. "She still does. And from now on, you are." Mrs. Green wiped her tears quietly in the background, whispering a prayer of thanks. Father Raymond smiled and said softly, "Looks like her wish finally came true." Days turned into weeks, and the mansion that once echoed with silence now brimmed with laughter. Lila filled every corner of the home with life, from her giggles echoing in the garden to her little footsteps running up the stairs. Daniel, once consumed by grief, now found himself smiling every morning. He started reading bedtime stories to her, something he and Elena had always dreamed of doing for their future child. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Daniel took Lila to the cemetery. He carried a bouquet of white lilies while Lila held a small handmade card that said, "Thank you for sending me my new daddy." They stood before Elena's grave, the autumn leaves whispering gently around them. Daniel knelt and placed the flowers down. "Elena," he said softly, You never stopped caring. Even from heaven, you found a way to bring light back into my life. Lila knelt beside him, her little hands folded. Thank you, Lady Elena, she whispered. I'll take care of him just like you took care of Mommy and me. Daniel's eyes filled again, but this time his heart felt full, not empty. The pain of loss had finally transformed into peace. He looked at Lila and smiled. You know, she always said kindness has a way of finding its way home. I guess, and you're my proof of that. The girl smiled brightly. And you're mine. They stood there, hand in hand, two souls connected by love that death couldn't destroy. As they turned to leave, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of lilies. Daniel could almost hear Elena's voice, soft, loving, eternal, whispering, You kept your promise. He smiled up at the sky. And I always will. From that day on, Daniel wasn't just a man who visited his wife's grave. He was a father, a guardian of the love she left behind. And together, he and Lila began a new chapter, one written not in sorrow but in the everlasting language of kindness.